If God brought to you an opportunity of a lifetime, what would be the hardest thing for you to leave behind? We're talking about that and more today on the 167.
1, 2, 3, let's go!
Hey, welcome back to the 167. I'm Pastor Lucas Motley, and with me today is Megan May, our Connections Director,
Yes, good morning.
and Pastor Rick George, our
Good morning.
Senior Pastor.
Yeah, good to be here.
And so this is the second week of our series that we've been in, Burn the Ships. And so kind of riffing off that idea of Cortez when he came to the New World, his guys were like, maybe I go back to Spain and quit this. And he was like, no. And he
Yep, we're
lit
burning the
ship.
ships. You're here. You're not
Yeah.
going back.
And so this week, Pastor Rick was bringing the message, and you were talking to us a little bit about like that. It wasn't a ship burning moment, but it was like a, barbecue, ox burning, yoke, plow burning moment.
Yeah, 1 Kings 19 was the text. Elijah, who was the prophet, going and looking for his replacement, essentially. He finds Elisha, who's just doing his ordinary work, just plowing a field. And Elijah says, here you go. Throws his cloak or his scarf, his mantle, whatever, throws it over him and walks off. And Elisha immediately, like he knew this is a big deal. And immediately he ran after Elijah to say, hey, this is awesome, but can I first go back and like say goodbye to... And Elijah says, sure, you can do that, but just understand the longer you delay, the harder it's going to be to move forward. And so he goes back, kills the oxen, burns up the plows, says goodbye, has a going away party, and he hits the road. There was no turning back. He burned up everything that he could go back to. So, yeah, it's a very vivid illustration of an all-in commitment to do the thing that God is calling you to do.
Well, and what an interesting thing, because it's like, it's a once in a lifetime opportunity, right? If Elon Musk showed up at your door and said, hey, I want to give you a job, but you got to go right now. It's like, would you be like, I got to put in my 2 weeks notice? And it's like, no. Right now, or we're done. Like, would you go?
Yeah.
It's a really interesting kind of conundrum of looking at people and going, and you even had that in the New Testament where the guy comes to Jesus and he says, hey, I do want to come. I do want to be a follower, but I need to bury my father. And somebody raised that question one time, and they said, it doesn't even say that his dad's dead.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, well, I need to wait around for my father to die, and then I'll be right with you in 10, 15 years.
It's like, nope, it's right now. Are you ready to do what I want you to do now? Now, on the flip side of that, I will admit, and this is maybe not, it doesn't support the message fully, but I'll admit, you can say no, and there may be another opportunity that comes around. There may not be, but there very well could be. Mm-hmm. And so it's not like, oh, I didn't follow God when he first asked me, so my life is over. He'll never use me again. That's not the point. I think that there are other opportunities. The point is you're going to miss out on a lot of things that God did have planned for you, and you're going to go through some things that he was trying to prevent you from going through. Mm-hmm. And so it's not like your life is over if you don't go immediately. You're just going to miss out on a lot. So I don't want to give that escape hatch,
right?
But the reality is there are many of us who go through life who said no or who didn't act. It doesn't mean your life is over. It means you may not. Yeah, there's a wasp flying around here. Look at that. It's what happens here on the 167. Good job.
He's dead.
Boom.
He just wanted to say hi.
Say hello to my little friend.
Brent's gonna love this.
All right, so in case you're wondering what just happened, killer hornets just came out of the wall. No, there
It
was
like went through Megan's hair, down her leg, and then rested on my leg, and then I curb stomped it.
There it is. All right,
Sorry for all the
So-
vegans out there.
The adrenaline. Whew.
now we're back.
That wasp was like, "This is my one opportunity," and
I get to be on
Literally
camera.
right here.
What'll
Yeah.
be cool is if you could, because it went right across. If you'll be able to see it on camera.
We're gonna see if we can make this.
I guarantee you, Brent is probably gonna make that happen.
All right, cool.
If not, he's gonna
So if,
illustrate a Pokemon.
so if a wasp came, and what would
Well,
you do?
A duck and run.
Yeah, no joke. It's fine. But one of the things I wanted to ask is we kind of got started. So if you're in that scenario, if you're in the, I always want to say Elijah or Elijah, and it really throws me off too that some people now started saying Elisha. It's like the same people that say Habakkuk instead of Habakkuk,
Yeah.
but it's like Elijah and Elisha, and I'm like, that sounds like Elisha. You know, like I don't know, it sounds like a girl's name. But so Elisha, if you're in the Elisha situation, if Elon Musk, if somebody comes up to you and says, "Hey, you know, I'm calling you out right now. Let's get in the car and go." What would be the hardest thing for you to leave behind?
That's such a good question. I think for me, in that moment, running through my mind would be like everything, right? Like, oh my gosh, like my family, my friends, my job, like all the materialistic things here.
Would you ask, can Jonah go with me, or do I have to leave him back here too? Would you ask that question?
Probably.
Okay, good.
I mean,
That's a-
depending on what the context, right?
Yeah,
If we're
that's
talking
a
about
good
crazy
answer.
context.
Like, yes, I would ask if my husband could come. That's fair.
yeah. I think that's such a crazy thing to think about. Of, you know, are you just gonna go up and leave everything that you've ever had, which is hard. But I don't know. I think it's harder on the other side of like the regret of thinking, what if I did that? Like God called me to this and I never went. Like that grief and that kind of feeling is almost worse than the nervousness you might have saying yes.
Well, when I wrote this question, I was thinking about this because, like, you're in a stage of your life that, you know, I'm not trying to condescend it. Like, comparatively, we have a lot more.
Right. I don't have
ties.
kids, especially.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
have, right.
It's like, you know, we're all like, oh, you're young, just go. You know, like, and so we're all at three very different places in our lives where it's like, what would be that? Like, we have different responsibilities.
Yeah.
So it's like, so for you, it's like, hey, can I bring Jonah?
Yeah.
Right. And like, even for me, growing up in a minister's family, and maybe if you grew up in a military family, if you're listening to this, you know, you kind of feel that where it's like, hey, your dad got stationed somewhere else. And so the whole family picks up and goes. So even if your family can go, you know, it's like, hey, we're offering you this job opportunity. We'll move your family, you know, like, but would you still go? Like, what would be the things that you're leaving behind?
Yeah, and for the vast majority of people who are not in full-time ministry, then the question would be, okay, if God were calling you into full-time ministry, if God speaks to you and says, hey, I am calling you to a place or a position, or like, would you be willing to act on that?
If
Or would
only
you
we
say,
had-
no, I can't do that because I've been with this job, or I've been, you know, my family, or this, I can't, like, no, this is a bad time, I can't do it.
If only we had somebody on the podcast that had been through that.
Yeah,
And we could
that-
ask him.
Yeah, that would, if that were only the case. But yeah.
So what was that like? You know, so like I said, you went through that phase of, I have a steady job, I'm doing ministry part-time, and then it was like, we're going to call you full-time. What was probably the hardest part of your previous kind of life to leave?
Looking back on it, it seems silly now, but so we had 3 small children, like so back in that day, so the like 10, 6 or 10, 8, and 6 were probably the ages, somewhere in that, and so probably the biggest concern was financial. right, so how are we going to provide for our kids? Like, I'm taking a cut in pay. I had, like I said, I had incredible insurance at the company that I worked for. They paid everything. Like, we had 3 children and didn't pay anything for those kids to be born. Like, it was phenomenal insurance.
Now I'm super jealous.
Yeah. And so, like, that was a big deal. But when they asked and Trudy and I prayed, like, the answer was immediate. Like, we knew immediately, yes, like, this is what God wants. And so we just moved forward. I went and gave my resignation and said, I'm leaving, and didn't really know. I hadn't been to Bible college. I'd never been a full-time pastor. I had no idea. I just knew that it's what God wanted.
Right.
And so we did it. We didn't have to move. Like, we stayed right where we were. So that's a little different than if God said, oh, I'm calling you and I want you to move. That wasn't the case for us. It is the case for some people, though. And I'm inspired by the people who have literally packed up and moved to pursue God's plan for them. Sometimes it's on a foreign mission field. Sometimes it's just in another state.
Excuse me.
Those are big things too.
Yeah.
So,
I think it like it almost calls you to have like radical obedience to God. Like this idea that no matter what, you will say yes. And I think that's something that I've struggled with in my life, of just God's called me to so many things and they're not even bad. They're not even maybe that hard. They're exciting and good, but it's still change and it's still different. And so that's something that I really struggle with, of God will call me to something and I'll just kind of like close my ears for a little bit, kind of pray on it and wait, I'll just pray about it. I'll just wait. But all the while God's like, no, like I have something awesome for you and I want to use you in this. And I think it can be really hard for people to just say yes,
Yeah. And more than likely, it's not going to be go to Africa to be a missionary. More than likely, it's not going to be God saying, I want you to quit your job and become a full-time pastor. It is more likely that God says, I want you to join the worship team. I'm leading, like, I've gifted you to, and blessed you with a home that you can open up to host
Right.
a life group. Or it's those kinds of things. It's in the daily, like, decisions that we make that we oftentimes don't consider what God wants.
Well, I think you bring up a good point, because sometimes it seems like a little decision and it is life altering, so like, it seems like an everyday decision where, you are sitting there and going, like if our families are looking at going, maybe we should tithe. I'm going, you understand that's going to be life altering for you, because you're going to start to face these decisions where it's like, oh man, we could really go and do this with our money. And it's like, no. We have pledged to do this.
Right.
And it's going to change things in your life. It's going to alter it. If you decide as a family that, hey, we're going to go all in serving, there's going to be times like I dealt with this growing up, being in a ministry family, and my kids deal with it, where they're going, well, our sport says that we have to come practice on Sunday mornings. And I'm like, no, and maybe that makes the difference between, whether you're going to do traveling or whether you're going to do,
Like
competitive,
Parks and Rec.
Right.
Yeah,
Or-
competitive versus Parks and Rec,
Yeah.
stuff like that. Like, I always joke with people, because a couple of our girls have been good at sports, and somebody's like, oh, are you going to take them competitive? And I was like, oh no, we're here for the power of friendship. Like we're here to play and to exercise. This is not our thing is that we are a ministry family, not that we are a sports family. And I think that those things, they seem like small decisions sometimes, but can radically alter your life. Even, my brother and my dad were talking about a decision that my dad was thinking about. It was actually when they were thinking about moving out here. And my dad was like, yeah, your mom really feels like she wants to go help, homeschool our girls and things like that. And he was talking to my brother about it. And he's like, I've been praying to the Lord, and like, I haven't heard anything. And Josh goes, well, why don't you switch it around? And he goes, what do you mean? And he goes, pray and say, if we're not supposed to do this, stop me. And he goes, because what you desire is a good thing that is biblical. And he goes, so it's not like God's not having you do that. And so if you're sitting there going, like this with Elisha, and it's like if somebody comes and calls you and says, "Hey, come and be in ministry, come and do the things of the Lord," it's more like, well, why would I not do that?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
kind of having that decided.
Yeah,
in your
and
life.
so one of the questions to have some answers predetermined.
Yeah, you said that in your sermon. You
Yeah.
said you should have the answer ready. So, when it comes to this, like, and you said, like, it's okay to kind of run scenarios in your head and going, okay, what if God asked me to do this? Would I go? What if God asked me? And having that answer ready. So, what are some of the things that we should have ready in our
Yeah,
pocket?
and so I'm thinking, so with career choices, which is kind of what we've been talking about a little bit here, of if God asks you to do this, and so there's a difference between God asking you to do something and then just being presented with a random opportunity. Those two things can coincide and work together, and they may not. So the opportunity may be God, it may not be God. And so you have to understand that every day presents opportunities, and how you respond to them is important. So if some opportunity came up and it was, "Hey, Megan, here's an opportunity to go into this job, and we're going to pay you X number of dollars, which is more than you're getting paid now," like, what would your answer be? Well, you got to go back and have those conversations in your heart. Okay, what is the most important thing to me right now? Is it money? And if it is, yes, you're going to jump at it.
Right.
If it's not, if it's no, here are some criteria that if this opportunity meets all these criteria, then yes, I'm willing to do that. Oftentimes, people make career choices simply based on a monetary figure, and somebody offers them a job and it's way more than they're currently making, and they jump at it, and then it takes them down a path where they have to start compromising their convictions, or they miss church on Sunday, and it impacts family time or whatever, and then it's like, man, I shouldn't have made that. Well, you made the decision based on the wrong criteria. So that's why it's important to have those conversations to say, what do I believe, and what is God calling me to now? And if he called me to something else, what would my answer be? And it's not a simple yes or no. It's a deep dive into when would I, why would I, how would I respond, kind of situations. And so I can't tell you. I mean, that's an individual decision that you have to do that deep dive into. Okay, God, if you call me, then I'm going. But if it's not you, I'm staying.
Yeah.
So
And I think it's important, like you were saying, to do that deep dive with everything that God calls you to, whether it's opening your home for a life group or becoming a missionary in Africa, right? Because if God can't trust you with the little things, like how is he going to trust you with the big things?
exactly.
You know? So,
Well, and I would kind of ask a clarifying question here, because we say that, and it's one of those things that I'm on this thing right now where I'm like, we say Christian things and don't really explain. So like, what was either an instance for you or how it worked for you that you got clarity? You're like, oh, this is the Lord, right? Because in this story, Elisha, the God doesn't appear to Elisha in a burning bush or a burning plow or burning, an oxen doesn't turn around and speak to him. A guy comes to him, somebody who is well respected in the community, somebody that he knows is a man of faith, and he says, hey, I have this opportunity for you. And so I agree. I think there's a lot of things that get offered to you, like, as well as I, like, we meet with people all the time that they're promoting a mission, right? Or they're promoting a program or a Christian book, or they always want to sit down, they take you to lunch, and then they go, hey, listen, I want you to come with me. Recently, or it was like last year, I think, or 2 years ago, somebody was doing something in Ukraine, which is really cool and really powerful. And he was like, you should come to Ukraine. And I'm like, I don't know if that's for me or not. And it's like, and it was just like a 2-week mission trip or whatever. But I'm going, we get presented with stuff like that all the time. And it's, how do you differentiate what is the Lord actually calling me to, and what is it that somebody else is like, I'm doing this, yeah, you should come with me, and it's like, yeah, that's not what the Lord's called me to.
Yeah. So every day, I think I mentioned this in the message, but every day of faithfully serving where you are is a day of preparation for what God is calling you to. So I'm just being faithful here to do what God asked me to do. And then if God shows up and asks me to do something else, well, I'm already prepared. Right? And so going back to my story, and I don't want this to be about me and my story. It's just relevant. So my story did not begin with them asking me to be a pastor at the church. That's not where the story began. The story began years before that, when as a new believer who wasn't raised in church, as a new believer in a very small church, I just decided to say yes to a position, a leadership position. It wasn't big, it was something small, but I said yes to that. And then I was faithful in that small position to work with a youth group of probably 6 or 7 kids. But that decision to say yes then prepared me for the next opportunity at that church, where it was, hey, would you consider being in this position? Yes, I would do that. I'm honored. Right? And then again, small church, 75, 100 people maybe. And then later down the road, when we were at the church where I eventually became a pastor, we just went there to attend. Like, we're just there. And shortly after starting to attend, there was a need for greeters. And we're like, well, we can do that. And so we started greeting at the front door. Shortly after that, the people who coordinated that left and asked if we would take their position. Yes. Like, it was a series of faithful, obedient, and saying yes to the next thing that then ultimately took us to a place of, would you quit your job? It didn't start,
Right.
hey, to be a door greeter, you're going to have to quit your job. And it's like, no, that was down the road.
Yeah.
So it's those little decisions, opening up your home to say yes, to say, yes, I will serve one Sunday a week in early childhood, or yes, I will work in the parking lot, or yes, it's just those series of yeses that lead to something bigger.
Well, and not skipping those, because a lot of people, they want to skip that, and it's like, then they don't have the skills to
Yep.
perform. What about you, Megan? Like, you're kind of earlier on in this journey. What do you think it was for you that, like the small things that you have said yes to?
That's such a good question. I think kind of going along with what Pastor Rick said, for my story kind of started when I was like 12, little Megan doing worship. And my mom asked me, like, right after I got baptized, kind of made my faith my own a little bit. And she asked me, we had a New Life Connect card. Do you want to do the worship team? And I was like, can I? I'm so little. And we talked to the worship pastor at the time, and he was like, sure. We did an audition, and it just started from there. And then after that, the youth pastor at the time was like, hey, like, do you want to start a youth band? So we started a youth band. And so, like, kind of the same thing. I just slowly got up in leadership and stuff. And then found like, I really love ministry. I want to do this. And, went to college for that. And then through college, like, went on the missions field, and just like slowly, it's the people you meet and the people God puts you in your path. But if you don't say yes to the little things, then it's not going to happen. And I think it was hard, though, to know and to differentiate, is this God? Is this just me being excited about an opportunity, right? And kind of what this is. And so every time I went through that, obviously I did lots of prayer and asked my parents and, Carissa, like, mentors in my life that I would talk to. But ultimately, like, usually it's the good from the good, right? Like, going in the missions field, or like staying here and, having the missions field as my family, right? Like, what do you want to do? And it can be really difficult to differentiate that. But I think the main thing is, like, looking at scripture. Obviously, if something is against scripture, God's not calling you to do that. But then the other main thing is too, like, what has the Lord been saying to you in your quiet time? Like, do you spend time and sit and just listen to God? Do you pray? Do you read your Bible, right? Like, do you have, mentors in your life that you can talk to and that, like, breathe life into you and things like that, to where, like, when God does call me to something, can I fact check it almost, if that makes sense?
Yeah. And so I don't want to negate the extremes, like, but I want to focus on that middle, I don't want to focus on the never and always ends, to say, well, God never does. That's not true. Or God always does. That's not true. So it's in those little things, like you just said. It's not that God couldn't speak to you and say, I want you to pastor a church. Well, have you ever served? No, I've never served. Well, he's probably not going to ask you to pastor a church. He could. Like, I'm not going to negate that, but it's probably going to start
Right.
with being a life group leader, or, some element of leadership where and it's a journey. Could God just supernaturally? Yeah, he could. It's probably not the norm. So, yeah, it's that, hey, a youth band.
Well,
It's going to college. It's trying this. And
like you said, there's always like the exception to the rule, but like you and I probably get that a lot where I'll have people that come up and they're like, they've been a Christian for 5 hot minutes.
Yeah.
And they're like, I want to do what you do. And I'm like, listen, like I grew up in a ministry family.
Yeah.
I have a 4-year Bible college degree and a master's degree in what I do. And I've been doing it for over 20 years.
Yeah.
Like, you can absolutely do what I do. It may take a while. Like, you're going to have to go put it, you can't do it tomorrow.
Yeah. And that's awesome to have that desire to say, okay, we'll start saying yes to some smaller
Yeah.
things.
Right.
And then eventually.
Do you want to greet at the door? No, I want to do what you do.
Right.
Well, and so, kind of full disclosure, like we'll say periodically, maybe more than periodically, to people, if you want to preach, well, you might not preach on Sunday morning. Like I had somebody literally say, I feel like God told me he wanted me to preach a message at church on Sunday. No, you're not doing that. Oh, I'm sorry.
It was me.
Yeah, but on Sundays at the nursing home,
Yeah.
there's opportunities for you to speak, and you can start there. Say, well, I don't want to do that. Well, okay. Well, yeah. There's your answer.
Right. Yeah.
There's your sign.
That's the, I always loved the line. There was an old 80s movie called Lady Hawk, and this guy comes up. He's like, the Lord has sent me to you. And it's Matthew Broderick. He goes, frankly, sir, I speak to the Lord all the time, and he's never mentioned you.
He never mentioned your name. I'm sorry.
But so I think that some of those things, though, that we should have settled in our lives in order to prepare for those moments are you in this? We talk all the time. People are like, people want Jesus to be their savior, but not necessarily their Lord.
Yeah.
Do you trust the Lord that if he's called you into something, that he's going to sustain you, protect you, help you, teach you?
You should explain that a little bit, because that was a big explosion moment for a lot of people. I think that Jesus is not just your savior, but he's your Lord.
Oh, like a lot of people are like, save me, Jesus. And then he's like, cool. Now I want you to go do this. I'm like, oh, no. Like, I don't actually want to obey you.
Yeah, I just don't want to go to hell.
Yeah.
Like
I want you to save me. I want you to do for me, but now I don't want to do for you.
Yeah.
And so that's what you see a lot of people, and it's me included. I will include myself in this, is that the biggest battle for me as a Christ follower is when God calls me to something that I don't want to do. It's like, we all love the passage where it's like, God wants to give you the desires of your heart. I'm like, yeah, that's great. But, then there's stuff that like he calls you to do and you're like, I don't want to do that, and I think that a lot of times that is a temporary thing because it's going to be a learning experience for you. But, and I hate to pick on the same thing all the time, but like I said, every year, Chris and I will be like, oh, how can families afford to go to Disney World every year? And then we get our tithe, statement back and we're like, oh, that's how. Yeah. But that's not what we're called to. God's called us to be faithful. And so, and we don't, every time that comes out of my, check or whatever, I don't sit there and go, oh, like I'm happy to give it.
Yeah.
And it's been a mentality change. But there are just certain things that it's like, there are things that will come up in my life that the Lord's like, hey, like, are you going to forgive that person? Are you going to do this? I'm like, but I don't want to, and I get like that. It's like, but he's the Lord of my life, and I have to change who I am to pursue him. So like, Elijah and Elisha, it's like, hey, God's called you to prophesy and to do miracles. And it's like, that's so cool. Now I'll get back to you in 10 years after I finish plowing this field and how after I do this and da-da-da. And it's like, you got to come right now. And either he's king or he's not.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so when you mentioned, tithing, which is a big deal for a lot of people. I mean, I just say it like it is. It's like, I can't afford to like, I'm just not in that place right now. We have so many other things. I mean, that's just a sign that you have not done the deep dive to answer some questions of what really you should be doing. You're just going off of, this is what I want.
Right.
And so when God, like, you and I have both had conversations with people who have said, like, well, I'd really like to tithe. Like, I understand, but I really, it's like, no, you don't really want to tithe. If you really wanted to, you would.
And it doesn't matter if you want to or you don't want to.
If he wanted to, he would.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've been asked to.
Yeah, you have to just say, yes, I'm going to do that. And then you figure out the rest of it as you go. That's like what we just talked about. Yes, I'll go on a missions trip. Well, what does that mean? Well, we'll figure that part out as we go.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that you're going to be a full-time missionary in another country. It just means, okay, now I know something and I have more information and I was obedient and God's going to direct me.
Right.
So it doesn't matter what it is. Like, it's that willingness to say, okay, I will do what you asked me to do, and then let God work out all the details. Elisha did not become the prophet right then.
Yeah. He goes into his apprenticeship.
He went to be an assistant, right? It was yes, and then we'll work out the details later. So,
Yeah.
So you also said something in your message I wanted to ask you about, because you said it's just as important to know what God has called you into as to what he has called you out of. So tell me a little bit about that, and then I'm going to ask you guys, like, what is something in your own life that you feel like you're like, oh yes, God called me into this, but he has also called me out of something else.
for me, it's super easy. So go back to the story that I've been telling you. So God called me out of a life of sin. Like, he called me out of that past life. And I knew immediately that he was calling me into something more than, like, I could tell you as a 17, 18, 19-year-old young person, I knew that there was more that I would be doing than just going to church and coming home. I couldn't articulate that. I don't know what that meant. I just knew that he was calling me into something more. And so I wasn't just leaving something out, I was walking into something more. And because I knew that there was more, I think, like, if I go back and I said, I think that's what enabled me or gave me the courage to say yes to those opportunities, because I knew there was something else that he was calling me to. So it's, if you just focus on, well, he called me out of sin and saved me, all right, well, then the story ends there. I'm
Right.
not going to hell. I'm good. No, what is he calling you into? What's the next step of obedience? So we go through.
Do you think that that has to do with why people slip back so easily? Because it's like, you know, God's called me out of sin, but now I don't have any new habits. I
Yes.
don't have any new routines. I don't have a purpose.
Absolutely. Yep. And so if you don't know what you're going towards, then you don't have the motivation to keep moving forward, and you'll slip backwards. You're either going forward or backwards. And so I don't know exactly what that thing is. I just know it's something. And so pursue that. So
Yeah. What about you, Megan? Can you think of something that you've been called out of versus into, and vice versa?
Yeah, I was thinking about that as Rick was talking, and I was like, man, there's so many things in my life. And I'm going to try to pick at least kind of a good one, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, there's been a lot of times, like, I did worship all my life. Like I was just kind of mentioned earlier, like, I started when I was 12 years old. It was just something I loved to do. And then something that, you know, grew my relationship with God, grew my relationship with others in the church. And that kind of got part of my identity growing up, even going into college. Like, that was a job that I got to do, traveling worship band and all that. And it was amazing, and I loved it. But while I was on tour or whatever, going to different churches and stuff, I remember the Lord was speaking to my heart. Like, I would see, like, these youth camps, you know, and these kids would come to the altar and have their people to pray with, these adult leaders. I remember seeing that, and God was like slowly calling me to discipleship, or just calling me to outside of worship. And that sucked, because that was something that I loved to do, that I'd done for so many years.
And you did a great job.
Thank you. I miss it. I do miss it. But my senior year of college, the Lord called me out of youth ministry, called me out of worship, and took me a different direction. And that was something that was really hard. I had to say yes to the new things. That is my current full-time job, which is awesome, right? But I had to say no to things that I loved to do and that I grew up doing and was, good at doing.
I read Corinthians 13:11. When I was a child, I spoke like a child and thought like a child and reasoned like a child. But when I became a man, I put away childish things. I mean, when I came into discipleship ministry, we put away all that.
Put away that childish other stuff.
But that was hard. Like, I feel like every time God gives you...
Well, you're
every
sitting
time-
next to two guys that Pastor Rick had kind of a musical ministry. You and your family would sing together and perform together. And then I was a worship pastor for 11 years.
So clearly, if you want to be a pastor, just start in worship.
Trudy and
so.
I used to sing some special music at our former church, and we'd use those cassette tape background tracks, and then we would sing.
What's a cassette tape?
It's,
No, I'm kidding.
What's a CD?
Yeah, we were killing it back in
Yeah.
the day.
Yeah.
I think those are really good examples, though. Like for a lot of people, like I said, I have ministry examples, but even something like marriage, sometimes you don't realize that when you're called into marriage, when you commit to somebody, you are called out of so many things. And I think that's why so many couples struggle. I watch couples, and especially because I'm dealing with the husbands, they still want to do all of the bachelor things that they used to do. And it's like, but I'm losing, it's like, no, you've been called into something greater. You've been called into a relationship, and that changes. And so you've been called out of all these other behaviors that you used to do. And you can, that doesn't mean you can't ever go golfing with the boys. You can't, go sit down and talk with your guy friends, whatever. But that's no longer your primary responsibility. You've been called into something greater. And some people don't know they've been called out of the other thing.
Yeah, and sometimes, and oftentimes, in marriage specifically, but oftentimes you're expected to burn some of those ships, some of those bridges, some of those things in the past. You got to leave them behind, burn them up, and move forward.
Yeah.
Like, to have a great marriage, you're going to have to kill some things off and burn some things up.
Yeah. I deal with men, and a lot of times they're like, yo, yeah, I have like this girl who's like my best friend. I'm like, not anymore. Nope.
Nope, that's not.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, burn that number.
Delete, block.
Yeah,
And so that leads us to our last question. What I don't want to ask you, but like, why do you think, and it's not necessarily that those things are miserable, some of the things we really enjoy, but there are genuinely people in our church that come from misery. They come from dysfunction. They come from addiction. They come from overworking and all these things. And God calls them out of their sin, and we come into marvelous light, and we still are hesitant to leave those things. We're still hesitant to burn those toxic bridges that we were in, or those toxic ships. Why do you think that we're still so hesitant to do that?
Familiarity. There's comfort in knowing. Like, I know it's wrong, but I'm just comfortable in it. I know what that is. I don't know what the next thing is. Right? And so we tend to go back to the thing that we're comfortable with, that we know. But I think that's been my experience anyway.
The fear of the unknown outweighs the pain of the comfortable.
Yep. So
Well, and I think a lot of the times people who come out of misery, whether it be, abusive relationships, toxicity, health issues, whatever it is, they're so fixed on themselves and they're not fixed on Jesus. So like, even though God is slowly coming into their lives, maybe they have that God moment at church or through a person or whatever, or through that diagnosis, or they get out of it, they're kind of in that limbo of, yes, it's uncomfortable. So that's a whole level, but also they haven't trained themselves to fix their eyes on Jesus.
Okay, but I'm going to pick on you. If you say, just fix your eyes on Jesus, what does that mean?
I was just about to say. So not only is that oh my gosh, like looking above, but like surrendering all of you. So your time, your money, right? Like tithing, like I have a hot button on tithing, and I feel like I'm a young adult, so it should be like one of the hardest generation to tithe, but like
For some reason, this podcast has turned into tithing.
it's just I'm not necessarily passionate about it, but I'm passionate about following the Lord, and that is a big thing that people don't do.
Yes.
But like I said, with time, with your money, like spending time with the Lord in the mornings, right? Like volunteering at church. There's a lot of things in our lives that we are not fixed on Jesus about. We're so focused on ourselves, and it's easier when there is misery in our lives going on, and we do need to fix that. But the Lord is the only one who can fix that. And so if we're just focused on ourselves and we're focused on the hardship of what's going on, and we're not looking to the Lord for answers, we're not looking to get out of that, of course we're going to be stuck and we're not want to get out of it.
So if I could boil it down, like when you fix your eyes on Jesus, that becomes your number one goal or priority, right? So if you say, I want to run a marathon and that's my goal this year, you're going to change your diet,
Right.
you're going to change your daily routines, and you're going to sacrifice things in order to do that. And it's like if you have fixed your eyes on that goal, Paul talks about, I've fixed my eyes on the finish line, like that's what I'm going to do. And then when somebody goes, hey, do you want to go to an all-you-can-eat buffet? You're like, no, I've got my macros, I've got my goals, I've
Right, so
fixed my eyes on
yeah,
this.
so you've predetermined your answer already. Like some things you're going to say yes to. Someone's like, nope, that's a hard no. Not going to Old Country Buffet. Ask me next.
Old
ask
Country
me-
Buffet.
Ask me
I
next
haven't even
year.
heard of that one.
Really?
It's like Golden Corral, but
Yeah.
classier.
Yeah.
More
Yeah,
Panera.
I'm old.
But yeah, and I would agree. I think that some of the times we want to go back to those things because I always say that, like, well, I'll be praying with somebody and I'll ask them to confront the thing that they benefit from. They'll say, oh, like I'm trying to leave alcohol or whatever. And I'm just like, okay, but how do you benefit from this? Because people don't usually you don't love or like something that is just absolutely awful. You benefit in some way for this. Well, yeah, all my friends go to the bar, and so that's the only way I can see my friends. So if I don't drink, then I'm going to lose these relationships. And I'm like, okay, that's the thing that we have to confront is, are you willing to leave those relationships? You are willing to leave alcohol, but you're not willing to leave the relationships that are tied to that. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about that this week, but
Perfect.
yeah. So stay tuned. We're going to be back next week talking more about burning the ships. And we want to invite you to be at Church Live this weekend. We're going to have our Life Group Expo, so you can come and find a way to be a part of our community, meet some life group leaders, maybe connect here at the church. So we want to invite you back for that. And we'll see you next week here on the 167, where hopefully there will not be any more wasps in the studio attacking
Your
us.
little friend.
My little friend. All right, we'll see you guys next time here on the 167. If you enjoyed this episode of the 167, make sure you like, subscribe, follow, get notified, leave a 5-star rating and a positive review. Tell all your friends to listen as well. Make sure you go over to newlifegardener.com and check out all that we have to offer as a church, and check out our messages online as well. Thanks for listening.